Welcome to Politics Nation. We're just days away from a major court decision on Obamacare, and Republicans have taken a stunning position on it. They want the Supreme Court to take away insurance from millions of Americans. They won't do anything about it. And then they'll blame the president. Just ask Paul Ryan.
Whatever the Supreme Court decides later this month, I think the lesson is absolutely clear. Obamacare is just flat busted. It just doesn't work. And no fix can change that fact. We're not talking about a ding or a dent or a fender bender or a flat tire. The whole law is a lemon. The answer is to repeal and replace this law with patient-centered reforms. And if the court rules against the administration, then millions of people will be stuck with a government-designed health insurance that they cannot afford.
Now, let's be clear. They're arguing before the Supreme Court that because the language said states rather than federal government, that they should therefore take away insurance in 34 states. That will affect 6.4 million people that now have insurance under Obamacare. 6.4 million people in these 34 states will lose their insurance. Now, it also includes Paul Ryan's state of Wisconsin. In his state, 166,142 people will lose their subsidy in Wisconsin. Average tax credit for per enrollment, $315 a month. Gone. Playing politics on a word game. And they have the audacity to say, oh, we have a plan B, but we're not going to tell you until we take away your insurance because we are playing politics while we're dealing with people's lives. We must see the gravity of this. 6.4 million people, 34 states. You petition the Supreme Court and you tell these 6.4 million people, we'll tell you what'll happen to you if we win. And we're going to blame it on the president who provided you insurance in the first place. This is blatant, and this, in my opinion, is reprehensible. Paul Ryan says about this when people in their understandable fear say, but what's going to happen if the Supreme Court does what you guys asked to do? Listen to what he says.
We do have an alternative. I don't think it's going to be the next couple of days. It's probably going to be more in the next couple of weeks. But yes, we will have a Republican alternative to deal with this. We'll have a lot more about that later.
We'll have a lot more on that later. Later. 6.4 million people that will no longer be dealt with in terms of their subsidies and pre-existing conditions, their young people, their children covered to 26. We'll have more on that later. Let's go talk about it. Let's bring in Congressman Lloyd Doggett. He was in that House hearing today, and Jonathan Capehart. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good to be with you, Reverend.
Congressman, it amazes me that you would have men elected to office that would say with a straight face that we will tell you what Plan B will be after you lose your insurance, that we and our colleagues on the right have petitioned the Supreme Court for. And mind you, we're going to blame it on the president who provided this. We're going to remove it on a word game. And we'll tell you later what we're going to do if you lose your insurance.
That's so very true, Reverend Al. You know, what they're doing is picking out 4 words established by the state that appear 2 places in a 900-page bill and asking the court to disregard all of the history about our efforts. Why in the world the Congress would want to discriminate against some states and their uninsured over others? It makes no sense at all. And then what we have is really a historic moment where Chairman Paul Ryan is saying to that Supreme Court, please deny $52 million a month in federal tax relief to the people of Wisconsin because I have such an ideological commitment to destroy this president and his health care plan. He joined with two senators from Texas, Cruz and Cornyn, where they proposed to take away $206 million every month from Texas families. Over 800,000 Texans would lose that tax credit that they need in order to have health security. And to call it a lemon, my goodness, for some of these families, this is the first time they've ever had health security because of pre-existing conditions.
Absolutely.
Perhaps a child born with a disability, a family that has had cancer. They have some security now, and these Republicans are begging the Supreme Court to take that security away and deny their families tax relief. It's just so wrong. And then to have had almost 4 years and offer nothing but platitudes and attacks and 58 attempts to repeal this act. They don't have an alternative to Obamacare.
But Congressman, that's my point. Not only do they not have a plan B, if they had a way to insure those Americans, they had 5 years to present it rather than Obamacare. They never presented an alternative plan. They fought the president's plan that went through and is working. And now they tell us we'll talk to you later about a plan B if they succeed with a word game before the right-wing Supreme Court. Jonathan, is not only Ryan. Look at what Senator McConnell said when he was asked, what are we going to do to the millions of people that could be with no insurance if you succeed in the Supreme Court? Listen to what he said.
Well, depending upon what the Supreme Court decides, we'll have a proposal that protects the American people from a very bad law. I think we have to see what the Supreme Court decides before we announce a proposal to deal with it.
We'll have to wait. We'll get to that later. I mean, this is a callous disregard for how serious this is to millions, 6.4 million people to be exact.
Callous disregard for people who, you're talking about people's health. And it's not as though if the Supreme Court invalidates the exchanges and the health care law is gutted and all these people are thrown off their health insurance, that the Republicans just can walk in and in a matter of days or weeks put in an alternative that would then get those folks their insurance back. That's not the way governing works. That's not the way any of this works. If the Supreme Court does what the Republicans have been trying to do for the last 5 years and guts Obamacare, you're going to have millions of people, 6.4 million people, as you've been saying since the top of the show, will be without health care, and there will be no alternative on the horizon for months. The way things go in Washington and on the Capitol, and Congressman Doggett can talk about this better than any of us talking about it right now, nothing will get done. Nothing.
Well, and that's the fear. And let me tell you, it's not even politically wise. It, to me, Congressman, is a moral outrage. This is a moral argument to me. But even on the politics side of it, you have several GOP senators, 7 to be exact, who are up for re-election in 2016, who are in states that could lose these subsidies. These are states that elected President Obama. 2.3 million people in those states could lose insurance. So you've got GOP senators that are up for re-election next year that have 2.3 million together, people in their states that could lose insurance, and they're in states that the president won. How could they sit by silently and allow their own party to put their politics in terms of their careers and their positions in jeopardy like this? This is crazy.
It really is amazing. And of course, some of those states have the power to act on their own. Pennsylvania, for example, it can solve its own problem by simply creating a state exchange. And I think some of these Republican senators who are hopefully going to be displaced in this next election, some of those senators want to have their cake and eat it too. They'd like to keep Obamacare in effect through the 2016 election year so those families won't feel the immediate pain, while at the same time claiming that the Supreme Court is throwing out Obamacare. So they want to delay the pain and make the claim to their right-wing constituency that they prevented Obamacare. Hopefully, the Supreme Court will come along and do the right thing and preserve health care security. We need to be ready to act. I'll have a bill to file the day any bad decision comes down that would simply eliminate those 4 words and preserve protection for everyone. And we need to stand by the president on this issue.
So let me press you right there. You would have a bill ready right away that would eliminate those words and continue to do what Obamacare presently does. So you're not saying that you'll have a plan later if they lose, or by and by when the morning comes, as we sing in church. You'll be ready right there specifically with a bill that would deal with this problem.
Absolutely. All we need to do is take out those 4 words. I don't think the court will rule against Obamacare, but if it does, simply removing 4 words in 2 places in a 900-page bill, that solves the problem. We don't need a lot of hearings or investigation. Just preserve this health care security that so many of these families across America are counting on.
Jonathan, are they on the right so captured, so intimidated by the far right, the Tea Party wing, that they would risk even 7 senators' seats and risk 6.4 million people's insurance because they want to make a point against this president? Have we come to this?
I was about to ask, is that a rhetorical question, Rev? Look, they've been at this for 5 years. They've been trying to get this done. And I think, to make the political point, they would love to have the Supreme Court throw out Obamacare. Losing 6 or 7 Senate seats? Look, this is a group of folks who think in the short term. Saving 6 or 7 Senate seats is a long-term situation, and if they're thinking that way, they would do themselves, they would do their party, and they would do their country a favor by presenting an alternative in case the Supreme Court does their bidding. It is irresponsible.
If they have an alternative,
right? Well,
5
if they have an
years
alternative,
they haven't shown an alternative.
Right.
And that, I think, is the problem. And we're talking about a decision, Congressman. This month, the Supreme Court is coming back any day now. This is imminent. This is not something far-fetched. You are a jurist, and you know that this can go either way, and this is frightening for those people that are sitting there that has the threat of their insurance, some of them for the first time in life being taken away from them. Congressman Lloyd Doggett and Jonathan Capehart, I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you both for your time tonight.
Thanks, Rev.